Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you here today. I am Dr. Lakshmi Raghunanan, CEO and founder of Maman Biomedical. I'm here with my co-founder, Rupchan Raghunanan, CBO of Maman Biomedical. And we're developing microneedle drug delivery technologies for drug delivery. And we're starting with infertility, eliminating the 20 plus injections that women typically have to undergo during a fertility treatment cycle. We're here today with Alex from Equivesto. We've partnered with Equivesto for our current fundraising, and you'll learn more about that as we discuss. And hand it over to Alex, who would introduce himself on Equivesto.
Fantastic. Thank you. So yes, I'm Alexander Morsink, CEO and co-founder of Equivesto. Equivesto is a Canadian online investment platform and equity crowdfunding portal. We're licensed as something called an exempt market dealer, which enables us to help connect investors looking to invest in early stage companies and exciting startups like Maman. So I'm happy to be here today and look forward to answering your questions.
Thanks so much, Alex, for that. And so let's jump right into the equity crowdfunding. We've said that we're raising an equity crowdfunding round, and we've
Mhm.
partnered with you guys to do that. Help us understand, for those out there who are wondering, what does equity crowdfunding mean? Who can participate? And when it comes to this thing about accredited and non-accredited investors, what does that mean?
Perfect. Well, whole bunch of questions sort of all bundled together there. So I'll try to start at the start. So equity crowdfunding is essentially the concept of allowing a larger number of people to invest in smaller amounts into exciting private businesses. So we all understand the concept of investing in the stock market in public companies that are already listed on something like the Toronto Stock Exchange, where people can buy and sell the shares anytime. But normally for a private business, you're not able to just go out and buy shares directly. Normally, investing in private businesses is actually limited to only high net worth investors, which are in legal terms called accredited investors. So equity crowdfunding opens up private investing to all Canadians over the age of 18, really to allow more people to participate as part of that crowdfunding campaign in investing in the business. So to answer your question about what is an accredited investor and what is not, so the definitions for individual person for an accredited investor is someone with 200,000 in annual income or 300,000 combined with a spouse, or someone with over 1 million in net financial assets, excluding real estate, so investments, cash, savings, things like that, or 5 million in net worth, which would then include real estate and a variety of other assets that you would own. So again, 200,000 income or 1 million in financial assets or 5 million in net worth is the sort of legal definition for an accredited investor. So anyone who wouldn't fall into that category would be a non-accredited investor, or basically all the rest of us. And so equity crowdfunding makes it possible for all the rest of us to participate in investing in exciting startups like Maman.
I love that you say all the rest of us.
Of course.
All right, so continuing where you left off there, you mentioned a market exempt dealer, and Equivesto is a market exempt dealer. What is this and why is it essential for something like our crowdfunding campaign?
Absolutely. So, exempt market dealers are a specific type of financial institution in Canada. And essentially, when you're investing or dealing with investments in private companies, the government legally refers to that as the exempt market because those companies are raising capital, but they're exempt from the need to file a prospectus and go public. So basically, if you're not going public, you're exempt from having to go public. And so an exempt market dealer is a financial institution that specializes in the buying and selling of shares and securities for private companies in the exempt market. So that's basically decoding the title of our license. Equivesto has that license, and the license has many requirements, but essentially we use the license and our online portal to be able to connect private companies and investors across Canada to actually go ahead and make investments in a safe and secure way. So exempt market dealers primarily have three core responsibilities, and I'm sure your future questions will dive into those in a bit more detail, but the first responsibility is something called know your product, where essentially the exempt market dealer has to do a comprehensive due diligence into the company that it's helping raise capital for, because the exempt market dealer is essentially making that company and its shares into a financial product that is available to investors. So basically, the EMD has to fully understand all the details about the company and make sure it's safe, and everything's all legitimate there. The
So
second
base
responsibility is on the investor side, and it's related to something called know your customer or know your client. And so exempt market dealers are required to do ID verification and background checks on any of the investors who are signing up as clients, but also do a suitability and an eligibility assessment. So take a look at people's personal financial situations, make sure they understand the risks of making private investments, and make sure that the private investment fits within their overall financial portfolio goals. And of course, that they have individualized limits, so recommended maximum limits that they would put towards private investments because they are a bit different than public investments. So we've got the company due diligence and then the investor support. And then the third responsibility is actually the sort of transaction itself. So making sure that the transaction is done in a secure way. We know where the funds are coming from and where they're going, all the right documents are signed, and people's money is sort of protected all throughout the transaction. So those are sort of the three core responsibilities of an exempt market dealer. And when you look at making private investments, um, essentially to even be able to equity crowdfund at all, companies aren't able to go on their own and do an equity crowdfund. You can't sort of set up downtown Toronto with a little sign on the street and say, hey, come buy some shares in my company, only $10, and try to have people, buy and sell. That's actually not allowed in Canadian securities law. You can't actually even post about your own capital raise on social media. But if you're working with an exempt market dealer, exempt market dealers are actually able to do that sort of marketing because we're checking out the company and we're making sure the investor is suitable for that investment. So by using an exempt market dealer, one, you can crowdfund in the first place, and so you can do that in a compliant way. But two, it also allows you to actually communicate a lot more about the fact that you are raising capital and potentially expand the people who could participate in your raise.
And that brings us to another question. As you said, expanding the number of people that can participate in the raise means you'll have a lot more people potentially coming on your cap table. And how you mitigate that is through an SPV. Can you give us an idea of what is an SPV, how it works, and what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of using an SPV?
Absolutely. So just as for some quick context, an SPV stands for Special Purpose Vehicle, and it's not mandatory for equity crowdfunding. You could equity crowdfund from investors directly. Many, many people have. The end result, though, is you will have hundreds of shareholders owning small portions of your company, which is great. That's fantastic. That can sometimes have implications down the road because when you're trying to actually do corporate governance and manage, internal company changes, if you have many, many shareholders, you might require the shareholder signature from every single person who's invested in your business. And so if you're trying to go close a big deal with a large venture capital firm or something like that, and okay, we need to change this thing. Turns out we need 650 signatures to get that change done. That can sometimes be a little bit of an impediment to businesses going and, expanding and continuing their growth. So that's where the concept of a special purpose vehicle comes in. Now, it's a very fancy name, but essentially it just means a separate company that exists purely to invest in the other company. So it's just something that kind of sits in the middle between the investors and the actual company itself. So all the investors invest into the special purpose vehicle, and the only thing the special purpose vehicle ever does is then invest all that money as one into the underlying company. That way, when you're looking at, for example, Maman's shareholder ownership document, all of those investors who came through the equity crowdfunding round are summarized in a single line item, which is that special purpose vehicle company which made the investment. Now, the special purpose vehicle that Equivesto typically structures is a limited partnership agreement. Now, that's more beneficial for tax reasons, and we don't have to get into all the details of that why on this call, but essentially, a limited partnership is made up of two pieces: the limited partners, or the investors, who have no sort of responsibility for managing things, they're just putting up the money, and then a general partner, which is typically a corporation that helps kind of move the money where it needs to. And so the general partner corporation is jointly controlled by Equivesto and Maman to make sure that everything is handled properly and done in a very sort of transparent manner. So when you're actually going to make an investment via equity crowdfunding, but also via a special purpose vehicle, you're signing the investment documents to invest into the special purpose vehicle. And you'll see all the details of that on the Equivesto portal. And then the special purpose vehicle will invest directly into Maman. And the rules of the special purpose vehicle restrict it from doing anything with the money other than investing directly into Maman.
Thank you. That was a very whole answer. And for those of you curious, Maman is leveraging an SPV to do our equity crowdfunding. And so we've had that foresight to address future investors concerned. But here's where I want to elaborate, Alex, for those current investors who are coming in on the SPV, and this is something entirely new for them, and they're thinking, but wait a minute, I thought I was investing in Mammon. What does this mean for them? Pros, cons, or um,
Right. So in terms of the shares that you're actually getting and what ownership you're getting, you are getting ownership of the special purpose vehicle, which is a limited partnership, and then that limited partnership is what's getting the underlying investment into Mammon. So you yourself will not show up on the Mammon ownership structure. However, you will be represented by the special purpose vehicle on the Maman ownership structure, and you will have all the right documents to confirm your ownership of that special purpose vehicle. Now, I said we wouldn't go into the taxation thing. I still won't go into the details, but from a high level perspective, normally companies have to pay income taxes before they're able to pass money on to their investors. The benefit of using a limited partnership in Canada is that the limited partnership does not have to pay direct income taxes itself. So you, as a limited partner, are not going to deal with any additional taxation because of using the special purpose vehicle in this way. So there's no additional taxation or other complications to your investment. It's essentially the same as if you made the investment directly from tax purposes.
thank you. Now I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier also about due diligence. In order for us to start this relationship with Equivesto, we ourselves had to undergo due diligence with you guys.
Right.
Can you elaborate for our viewers what that entailed and what does it mean for us and for those investing into Mama?
Absolutely. So, as you rightly said, Maman had to go through a comprehensive due diligence process with Equivesto before being able to be listed on the platform and to raise capital. So, Equivesto's due diligence process is focused around verifying the information put forward by the company to investors. So, it starts with something as simple as, is this a real company? Does the company exist? Is Lakshmi a real person? Does she actually own Maman and all those sort of legal documents that's being verified? That continues into, what does Maman do? What is Maman saying they have? They have this technology. Do they have the right documents to back up? Okay, they do own this technology. They have created it. If they're saying they have relationships with potential customers, Do they have emails or documents to sort of back that up? The idea is, at the end of the day, when you as an investor review the materials about Maman, you could know the facts that are presented there have been double checked by Equivesto. It's our responsibility to double check those, and those have been completed. So you can say, okay, I know looking at this information that this is all confirmed. Now, there are some pieces, such as, forward-looking financial projections, which are speculative. It's not possible to double check them, and so that's not something that we can necessarily verify. And so that's up to you, the investor, to use your discretion when reviewing those. Another thing that is not necessarily being done by Equivesto as part of this is choosing, the most perfect valuation terms for you as an individual. Every person has their own risk preferences, tolerances, and willingness to undertake risk when making investments. And so obviously the offering has been put forward by Maman, but it's up to you, the investor, to look at the materials available, including the equity crowdfunding offering document, which has a long section on risk disclosures, to make sure that you feel comfortable taking on the risks associated with making this investment, and to make sure that the terms of the investment also align with your comfort level for taking risk.
Thank you. And Maman, we've been building for just about 18 months now, and we've been doing so publicly. Through
Mhm.
this time, we've amassed a huge community, and we always say how important community is for us. Now, you've emphasized before that the platform isn't a source of, we can't find people on your platform. We have to bring our community
Right.
into this platform. Can you elaborate more here?
Certainly. So oftentimes, yeah, when you're looking at marketing around equity crowdfunding, it's often described as, an opportunity to bring in a network, a community of people to invest. And many platforms, who I will not name, really try to emphasize the number of investor users they have on the platform to encourage more companies to sign up and use that platform. In our experience in the industry, typically the reality of the situation is most companies need to bring essentially almost their entire investment round themselves. And the big community that exists on the platform is typically not getting involved either at all or until basically all the way at the end of the campaign after all the money has pretty much been raised. For that reason, Equivesto approaches, communicating about our platform and how we operate a little bit differently. We want to be very transparent with founders rather than saying, oh, we've got 60,000 people, come here and pay us a big fee and I promise they're all going to come invest in you. The reality of the situation with equity crowdfunding is it's your community. It's the community around the business that understands what the business is building, the value there, is excited to support that. That's really going to actually come in and provide that investment and really give that vote of confidence in the business itself. And the platform is really a tool and a compliance feature to help make sure it's safe and possible for everyone to do that investment and engage in this process without taking undue risks. And so when we communicate with individuals like yourselves or with Maman, we're always trying to be very transparent in that, we're here to support this and create the infrastructure necessary to allow equity crowdfunding, but it's not a situation where, there's going to magically be 10,000 people coming out of the woodwork on the platform and they'll fully fund the deal in a moment. The campaign success is really going to be driven by Maman's community itself. You're muted, by the way, Lakshmi.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so I was, making a call to action to my own community here, um, to step up and visit us on Equivesto's platform. But that brings us a perfect segue into my last question. For those who have already invested our community, and we do have some of them who've already put their money in. Thank you, guys. Now that they've invested, what's next?
Great question. So, going to dive a little bit into the sort of mechanics of how crowdfunding actually works, but also talk about the investor experience post raise. So, during the round itself, all the investors are going in, they're signing the documents and providing their investment funds. The platform gathers all of those documents securely and all of the funds in a segregated trust account. And then at the end of the campaign, once everything is finished and all the money has been raised, that's actually the moment that the platform releases the money to Maman, of course, minus our fee. And then actually the investment is made. So the SPV then signs the investment document into Maman. Maman gets the funds and Maman issues the securities to the SPV. So it's not like that's happening sort of intermittently as the campaign is going. It happens in one sort of bulk transaction at the end. After the investment is completed, then the company takes the funds and goes off and continues to work on their growth and success. The company will typically provide quarterly investor updates either to the SPV, and then the SPV will disseminate to all investors like yourself, or the company could choose to release the information themselves directly. But we definitely recommend quarterly email updates of both the good and the bad to all the investors. And then investors would typically be invited to an annual meeting. As an investor in the SPV, because the SPV is a passive vehicle, you would be communicating with the SPV about any of those things. But Maman could, if they wanted to, invite their community to attend Maman's annual meeting. So every business needs to hold an annual general meeting for all of the investors to attend. And that cycle will sort of continue as the business continues to grow and expand until such moment where there is a liquidity event or a moment where essentially Maman is going public or being acquired or something like that. So at that moment, let's say Maman is huge and has decided to IPO on the Toronto Stock Exchange worth $2 billion. So at that moment, when Maman is IPOing and going public, that's when all of the shares would be publicly tradable and the SPV would automatically dissolve. So at that time, all of the shares would become public. They would flow back to the SPV, and then the SPV would disseminate all of the shares to the underlying investors like yourself. Now, if Maman was being acquired instead, somebody like Google says, you know what, this is really inventive technology, we should own that, and they decide to acquire Maman, same type of situation, but instead it would be the funds from the business being acquired. So the funds would flow to the SPV and then immediately would be disseminated to the underlying investors like yourselves.
Thank you, Alex. I think that wraps up our question. But let me ask you, is there anything that I haven't touched on that you think our audience should or would be asking or wondering?
Great question. There's two questions that sometimes come up from investors, so I'd be happy to address those now. So the first is in terms of where investors can invest from. So to participate in the offering, you'll need to be a Canadian resident for tax purposes. So we are not licensed outside of Canada, so we can't accept investors from the United States, Europe, or anywhere else in the world. You would need to be a resident of Canada. But if you are an accredited investor from overseas, please reach out to Maman directly. They may be able to communicate with you about taking an investment directly. The second point is if individuals are interested in investing either as a regular investor or an accredited investor via a personal holding company or something like that, that is absolutely possible. When you're signing up on Equivesto, there will be a question whether you're choosing to sign up as an individual person or as a corporation looking to invest. So make sure to choose the corporate option. Corporations qualify as accredited investors based on their ownership. So you'll still have to provide personal details if you want to invest via your corporation and you're an accredited investor.
Thank you so much, Alex. Great answers. I think we have a whole new understanding of investing in Canada now.
Fantastic. Well, happy to help and great communicating with both of you. I'd certainly welcome any questions from investors as well. So during the campaign, there's a Q&A section on Maman's page. You're welcome to post questions there and they'll be addressed. And you can also reach out anytime to the Equivesto team or the Maman team if you have more questions about the process or the investment itself. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much.
cut.